On Armenia's southern frontier, article by Haranush Dermoyan, published on February 18, 2026, on EVN Report. Syunik, Armenia's southernmost region, has long served as a strategic gateway to Iran and a front line against Azerbaijani encroachment. After the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War and before the 2023 ethnic cleansing, Syunik endured Azerbaijani incursions and occupation. Amid geopolitical pressure and ongoing threats by Baku that tested the region's defenses, resilience and security have been urgent priorities for Syunik. Between 2021 and 2022, Azerbaijani forces launched 3 separate campaigns against Syunik, 2 large-scale military offensives, and 1 low-intensity territorial advance near Sevlich. After the September 13th to 14th, 2022 incursion, direct attacks on Armenia's sovereign territory subsided. However, Baku continued with its threatening posture and escalated its aggressive rhetoric about the so-called Zangezur corridor, repeatedly threatening to open the route by force if Armenia failed to provide unimpeded access. This fueled widespread fear that Syunik could either be annexed outright or severed from the rest of Armenia. While tensions have eased somewhat after the August 8 agreements reached in Washington, uncertainty remains. Against this backdrop, Syunik has become a focal point for both the Armenian government and international actors. In January 2023, the European Union and a coalition of EU member states launched one of the most ambitious regional development efforts in Armenia's recent history, the Resilient Syunik Team Europe initiative. The initiative brings together EU institutions, European financial bodies, and partner governments to strengthen the resilience of Armenia's southernmost region. The initiative pools funding from the European Union, the European Investment Bank, EIB, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, and 11 European governments, Austria, Belgium, Czechia, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Poland, and Sweden, with Switzerland participating as an external partner. It functions as an umbrella mechanism to coordinate investment, prevent fragmentation, and maximize long-term impact. Aside from its strategic significance and the site of the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, TRIP, Syunik, with a population of about 115,000 people, has long been affected by economic stagnation, demographic decline, and heightened security risks. For the EU, strengthening Syunik's resilience is part of a broader regional stability agenda and aligns with its long-term vision of a more connected, economically viable, and politically stable Armenia. A multi-sector development platform. Resilient Syunik is not a single project. It is a multi-sector development platform. As of late 2025, more than 80 projects totaling approximately €200 million are underway, making it one of the largest Western-funded regional initiatives in Armenia. Most recently, on February 17th, new contracts were signed with 18 businesses to support their growth and development. The companies operate in sectors such as agro-processing, manufacturing, tourism, and hospitality, all vital to Syunik's local economy. Core priorities include economic development, social cohesion, infrastructure modernization, environmental sustainability, and institutional strengthening. Programs such as R2D Syunik support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, with financing, training, grants, and advisory services. Skills development and youth employment are advanced through school and vocational upgrades, targeted workforce training, and support for displaced populations. The initiative has expanded social and health services by supporting municipalities and NGOs that offer community-based care, disability services, psychosocial assistance, and inclusive service models. It also builds climate-resilient public infrastructure, including irrigation networks, water supply systems, renewable energy installations, and environmentally sustainable facilities. Additional support goes to climate-resilient agriculture and natural resource management through orchard development, greenhouse farming, pasture rehabilitation, and sustainable land use practices. Strengthening local governance, municipal planning, and participatory development is embedded across all interventions. One of the initiative's most significant components is a €50 million European Investment Bank loan, signed in 2025 to upgrade Syunik's core public infrastructure. The financing targets drinking water systems, education and healthcare facilities, and essential municipal services. It also addresses the needs of displaced persons and host communities. Work on the ground. On the ground, the Resilient Syunik initiative is delivering tangible change, from strengthening small businesses and green agriculture to expanding educational opportunities and upgrading public infrastructure and community services. More than 3,200 people have benefited from vocational education and skills development programs, while new or improved local services, educational initiatives, and community infrastructure projects were rolled out across the region. 22 community infrastructure facilities, from water supply and irrigation to energy-efficient systems, were improved and enhanced. 281 households adopted energy-efficient solutions, and nearly 2,900 farmers received agricultural support. Sustainable land and resource management now covers over 880 hectares of agricultural land and multiple natural resources. Improved social infrastructure and services have reached more than 24,000 people. While job creation is not the primary focus of the initiative, over the past year in Syunik, 52 jobs were created or preserved, 95 since 2023. In addition, 20 new MSMEs and startups were established, 56 since 2023, and 80 businesses received direct support, 123 since 2023. According to Robert Kukasyan, the governor of Syunik, the initiative aims to implement coordinated programs across education, healthcare, infrastructure, social services, and small business development to increase the province's overall resilience. EU Ambassador Vasilis Maragos says that total EU investments in Armenia are expected to reach 2.5 billion euros, with Syunik representing a major share of this commitment. We want the people of this region to develop their skills, become more competitive and more resilient, he said. Dozens of community-level projects are already reshaping daily life in Syunik. Communities including Goris, Kapan, Megri, Teg, Halidzor, Shinuhire, and Tatev have seen solar installations, restored irrigation systems, renovated schools and kindergartens, community centers, and improved public service facilities completed or underway. In the village of Shinuhire, a newly constructed irrigation system supported by the EU and the Austrian Development Agency now provides reliable water access to more than 3,000 residents and irrigates around 50 hectares of farmland, strengthening agricultural productivity and food security. It's one of 19 small-scale infrastructure projects implemented across villages and towns in Syunik. Other flagship projects include the Balak Village Pasture Users Association in Sisian, supported by Germany and Switzerland under the EcoServe program. This initiative focuses on pasture rehabilitation, fodder production, and sustainable land management. The Sisian Agrarian College has been modernized through Swiss, German, and Austrian support, enabling students to gain practical, work-based training under a dual education model. In Goris, a senior citizens center, a neuro-orthopedic rehabilitation facility, and the region's first adapted social taxi service now provide inclusive social and health services, including for displaced persons. In Kapan, EU-supported initiatives range from vocational arts workshops to a social enterprise printing house that provides employment and reintegration support for former prisoners. Together, these interventions illustrate how Resilient Syunik turns strategic investment into tangible improvements in livelihoods, services, and local capacity. For the EU and its partners, investing in Syunik is both a developmental and strategic choice. It strengthens Armenia's territorial resilience, reinforces local governance, improves living standards, and prepares the region for future connectivity and infrastructure. For residents of Syunik, the initiative represents one of the most significant and coordinated injections of resources into the region in decades, addressing long-standing vulnerabilities while building resilience against future shocks. U.S. involvement in Syunik. Before Donald Trump assumed office for his second term in January 2025, U.S. involvement in Syunik largely took the form of development, humanitarian, and governance programs, most of them coordinated through USAID. Washington also signaled support for Syunik through symbolic gestures. Following the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh, USAID Administrator Samantha Power visited Armenia and traveled to Syunik days after Artsakh was ethnically cleansed, to underscore Washington's focus on the region at a moment of acute humanitarian and security strain. Although at the time this was seen in Armenia as a disingenuous move, on September 14, 2023, just days before the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Yuri Kim had vowed that Washington would not let such events unfold. The last two U.S. ambassadors to Armenia, Lynn Tracy and Christina Kvian, also visited Syunik repeatedly, particularly during periods of heightened tension. This model of engagement shifted sharply under the second Trump administration. The dismantling of USAID and sweeping cuts to foreign assistance effectively ended U.S. involvement in humanitarian aid, economic development, and democracy programs in Armenia. In their place, the proposed Trump route for peace and prosperity introduced a fundamentally different approach to U.S. engagement in the region. Although the project's timeline and implementation remain unclear, Armenian officials have signaled that tangible work will be launched on the ground before the June elections. Moreover, in January, Armenia and the U.S. signed the implementation framework for TRIP, and a survey of the project was initiated in February. Armenian and U.S. officials have described the project as a central pillar of their strategic partnership and a potential model for expanding prosperity without compromising national control. Moreover, it was once again highlighted that Armenia's sovereignty and territorial integrity would be fully respected. Under the framework, TRIP would create unimpeded, multimodal transit routes through Armenia, linking Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan exclave while also promising reciprocal benefits for Armenia: investment, jobs, transit revenue, and wider export access. Although a new TRIP development company would manage the infrastructure for an initial 49-year term, the document stresses that, despite this structure, Armenia would retain full sovereignty over all project areas. The framework also ties TRIP to broader diplomacy, linking its success to progress in Armenia-Azerbaijan peace talks and Armenia-Turkey normalization. Washington sees the project not only as infrastructure, but as a strategic tool to anchor stability and economic integration in the South Caucasus. Beyond the potential long-term economic benefits for the region and Armenia, the immediate effect has been political and strategic. The prospect of U.S. involvement appears to have reduced, at least for now, the risk of an Azerbaijani attack attempting to seize the so-called Zangezur corridor by force and take control of a part of Syunik, a move that would have effectively severed the region from the rest of Armenia.